In our next panel, we're going to learn about a collaboration between the White House and cities across the United States to help make public safety data a lot more accessible and usable to the broadest possible audiences possible. Leading this panel will be Tiffany Andrews. She is a Code for America Fellow in the city of Indianapolis. Please help me welcome Tiffany and our panel.
I'm Emily, we emailed. Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be joined with a few of the colleagues here. Mike Wagner, who is the Chief Operating Officer for the City of Seattle. Next to him is Denise Ross, who, in your new role, you were a Presidential Innovation Fellow,
That's
but
right.
now you are.
Now I'm, a Senior Advisor for Community Solutions at the White House.
Yeah. And then Justin Ehrlich, who's a Special Assistant with Attorney General for the California. And then Emily Shaw, who is with Sunlight Foundation. She's the National Policy Director. So welcome. We have become increasingly aware of the challenges that are facing when we're talking about trust in the community between police and all the communities that they serve. There's been decades of kind of mishandling of use of force, officer-involved shootings, and basically the militarization of the department, which all came to a head, which we all know, in Ferguson, Missouri, where the community had an outcry and calling for reform, as well as local elected officials and congressional members answering the call in terms of wanting to really find out what is going on in all of our local police agencies. As we can see, The Guardian started to highlight the number of people that were being killed by police because that data was not available at the time. The Washington Post covering the fatal shootings that happened in 2004. At that time, it was 400. If you go onto the counted today, it's 940 people have been killed by the police, as well as looking at the fatal shootings. However, our government has started a movement, both locally and on the state level, in ways in which the president formed the 21st Century on Community Policing, which not only looked at police interaction data, but it also looked at body cams, social media, so really community policing, really looking at different ways in which we can really address kind of this decades of distrust and really start to take more of a holistic approach. Not only looking at it internally within the agencies, but really working with community members as a way to find solutions. And with that came out was the White House Police Data Initiative, which Denise will definitely give us some more information about. So exploring ways in which data and technology can be used to build trust. And with that, we'll kind of focusing on transparency, trust, engagement, and positive outcomes. So it's all about collectively and collaboratively, how can we utilize the technology and data to really solve this issue. So Denise, tell us kind of what is going on with the movement as of right now.
Sure, I will. Well, this started last fall. A colleague of mine, Clarence Wardell, and I, we were both Presidential Innovation Fellows, and we just started meeting over coffee and sharing articles over social media, because we realized that the discussion that was happening around policing was seriously lacking data. And we thought that maybe there might be a play, and so we started looking around at some of the local innovations that were already happening. And we were inspired by Seattle's work, for example, with the body cam hackathon, data hackathon that they held. We saw that Dallas, Texas had already released 12 years of officer-involved shooting data with tremendous detail, but they released it in HTML tables, so the power of the data hadn't really been completely unlocked. So we were inspired by these local innovations and thought, well, what would happen if we connected these leading police chiefs and their IT staff, and they could come together and share their emerging ideas as they go into this uncharted territory. We thought we might get 3 to 5 agencies participating. In April, we convened a meeting at the White House, and we had 16 agencies attend, all of whom committed to open at least 3 data sets about policing and participate in weekly phone calls to talk about their challenges and successes. And now we're at 26 cities across the country.
Wow. So, Mike, what made you decide to kind of join the police data?
Sure. Let me sort of set the context so that I went in with a new chief in June of 2014, and she was brought in by the new mayor, for change. And the Seattle Police Department was, at the time, still is, under a federal consent decree, and it had actively fought the settlement agreement for a couple of years, leading to the new chief coming in. The chief laid out a set of 4 principles when we went in, and those 4 principles have guided almost everything we've done within the city of Seattle. And the first one was enhancing public trust. So we knew, given the findings of the consent decree, that it was a department where there was a tremendous amount of mistrust between the department and the community, especially communities of color. So enhancing public trust became the first priority. And the way we operationalized that, how we're going to increase or enhance public trust was, one, through engagement, and not just through your typical means of engagement that you may think about when you think about community policing, going to meetings, foot patrol, bike patrol, all those types of things, but also engagement with the local tech community. It made a lot of sense in Seattle. It's a tech hub. To figure out different ways to engage the tech community to help us get out of the crisis that we were in. And the other way we operationalized it was the firm belief that the more we could increase transparency in all facets of what we do, the more we could increase public trust. So what led up to the hackathon and us engaging one particular hacker, but many since then, was sort of based in that foundation. So we just didn't decide that we were going to have a hackathon and it was going to be a cool thing to do because it was the latest, greatest thing. It's sort of part of everything else that we've been pushing toward the department as a way to increase public trust. Now, I think the reason we got so much credit for the hackathon is, well, one, the way it came about. I mean, the guy that sort of inspired it had requested any and all of our dash cam video, several terabytes of data, and we engaged him on social media, on Twitter, essentially saying, instead of fighting us, why don't you help us? And that led to the hackathon. And I think where we're getting credit is we actually took code from the hackathon and have started using it. We began using it last February. I mean, the goal of the hackathon was how can you release video, dash cam, and then soon to be body cam video, to be as transparent as possible, while at the same time try to protect the privacy rights of citizens. And so what the teams that came in developed, the one that we ultimately chose, was just over-blurred everything in the video. So it doesn't like, especially what we initially released, that someone rubbed Vaseline on the body camera, but it still gives you enough of a sense that you can see everything that happened with that interaction between the officer and the citizen. So if they do get into some sort of altercation, then you could ask for, if you don't get a clear sense of what happened, then you could ask for the properly redacted video that we released. So everything we've done, though, with the hackathon, working with the local tech community, releasing data, taking part in the White House Public Data Initiative, goes back to our #1 priority going into it, which was how do we enhance public trust between the Seattle Police Department and the community it serves.
And what type of response have you gotten outside of the hackathon with what people are doing with the data currently?
It has been, well, it's a proxy measure, but the Federal Monitor, they did commissioned a survey in 2013, and they just commissioned it over the summer in 2015. And we've seen public approval for the department go up, not as significant among some demographics, but still went up. And more important to us, what we've seen is the disapproval ratings really fall. Now, not that we go by poll numbers, but put that into the context of what's happened over the course of 2014 and into 2015 with Ferguson, with Baltimore, with everything else. We take it as one indication that we're moving, along with other proxy measures, that we're moving in the right direction. I'll give you my take from inside policing, because it's a constant discussion with our community and civil rights, civil liberties advocates, privacy advocates. But within policing, when they heard we're going to release all of our video data and the way we're going to do it, which it did end up, we are putting it on YouTube, and that wasn't strategic whatsoever. That was really, it was organic, as a lot of what we've done has been. It was sitting around the table once we had the code saying, what are we going to do with the video? Well, what does everybody else do with their video? They put it on YouTube. So we said, let's put it on YouTube as well. When that got out, we had police chiefs calling us saying, what are you doing? Because they knew that they would start getting calls. So the chief and I, we were getting calls from across the country saying, are you crazy? And fast forward 6, 8, 9 months later, now we're getting more and more calls saying, not what are you doing or why, it is how are you doing it. And so we've released the code on GitHub, but I mean, most departments don't have the capacity, they don't know what GitHub is. So we're getting ready to release it in a more user-friendly fashion, that if you're a small or medium-town department, you too can try what we're doing at least to see if that helps you become more transparent with your video data.
Oh, wow. Emily, how has the Sunlight Foundation, through its policy work, started to help with the Police Data Initiative?
Well, it's been a great privilege to watch the Police Data Initiative as it's developed. The Sunlight Foundation is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization which advocates for increased access to government information for the purposes of transparency and accountability. And we have been doing this at the federal, state, local, and international levels for a number of years at this point, and we've looked at many different ways of promoting access to government information. Open data is a really important tool for providing the public with access to information about how their government works and providing them an opportunity to interact with it. So, I have been working for several years at the state and local level specifically, and to me, there is no more salient level of government-citizen interaction than this local level. It's really where the rubber hits the road. It's where your interaction with government is personal. And this is certainly true for the relationship between communities and public safety. So this is, to me, really kind of the essence of the promise of open data in many ways when you think about connecting citizens with their public safety agencies through transparent access to data that interests them. And so we were so excited to see Denise and Clarence developing and then rolling this program out in connection with the 21st Century Policing Task Force, which highlighted the need for data and demonstrated the very broad interest in access to data. This is not just for good government organizations like mine. This is of interest to law enforcement. This is of interest to academics. This is of interest to different advocacy organizations. It's really impressive how broad the interest in improving access to data around law enforcement and criminal justice is. So, I mean, it's been just amazing to be watching and kind of, advising where possible agencies that are interested in getting involved. I've had the opportunity to talk both with police departments and with groups like civilian oversight boards to speak with them about how data can improve their relationships, improve their partnerships outside of government, and improve their ability to find the insights that are going to propel better public policy. So that's a little long-winded. We've got a number of kind of points of contact with improving data through our What Works Cities initiative. The previous panel, you had the opportunity to hear Beth Blower speak about the What Works Cities initiative, and Sunlight is a participant in that. I've told a number of cities and agencies within cities about how the interest in public safety data is coming both from a national level, through the Police Data Initiative, as well as through their local open data policies, which are growing in number and frequency. So, there are so many reasons for public safety to start thinking about how do we how do we get involved, and how do we get started with something that is coming, is the zeitgeist in a number of directions, I guess.
Can I add something quickly? We got feedback from one of our deputy chiefs a couple of weeks ago. He had participated in a planning meeting for What Works Cities, and he said because he's been participating in the weekly stand-up phone calls where we talk about challenges and successes in open data and policing, he was the only one at his city who totally understood what open data was. So I thought that was pretty fabulous, that policing is really the strongest pole in the open data tent in his city.
Right, I think just a good part of the initiative is also not only kind of looking for champions, but also providing information and support. I think is one of the hugest things in the initiative, is providing kind of like the wind beneath everyone's wings to really be able to sell forward, so you're not in it alone. So Justin, where does the California Attorney General's office kind of fit into this, and how did she kind of answer the call to open up some tough data sets with open data?
So the Attorney General of California just launched Open Justice, which is our open data initiative, about 2 months ago. And the words that inspired her to do it are the same that all of my fellow panelists are talking about as well, which is there was a huge trust deficit, and she wanted to strengthen the bond of law enforcement and the communities they're sworn to protect. So she wanted to think about how the state of California could be more transparent in what it does, and also to really drive public policy. And there's a lot of emotion and anecdote that gets infused into this really serious discussion. And as the national conversation is going on, she wanted to inject a universal language of numbers, so we could really bring some facts and really hone in on where there's the issues that we really want to identify some potential interventions to experiment and pilot. And as has been discussed already, we found a paucity of data that was collected, and we also found that we had some data internally that we had the opportunity to make public and share to really inform the conversation. So we released 3 data sets. The first was death in custody, which includes arrest-related deaths. We released a summary of the 65 million arrests in California over the last 25 years, as well as law enforcement officers killed or assaulted, and basically started to create a picture of what we could learn from those 3 data sets that would inform what is going on in California. And there are plans to expand this data sets to cover all of the criminal justice system, from school to prison pipeline, prosecution and courts, prisons, and recidivism rehabilitation. And as a part of that whole effort, Lincoln started speaking a lot with Clarence and Denise and with the work of the White House Police Data Initiative, and we started exploring what is the role that the state can play to help encourage all of these cities unlock their data. But also states serve as a data warehouse, an aggregator of all local data, which we then provide to the FBI. And so I think that really provides a unique intervention point to bring open data at scale, which is, this is a ground-led effort. Ultimately, we need good data from the locals, but if we can get a lot of states to get on board, suddenly you've got only 50 points who can then unlock thousands. So that's where we fit in.
Thanks. What are some of the challenges, I guess just the open question, like at each level, what are some of the challenges that people have been experiencing within releasing these types of data sets?
I think you can't, I think you can't underestimate how horrible the data systems that local police departments have. So I mean, it is, we have things stored in legacy systems, proprietary systems, and police departments love to store things in Excel spreadsheets, which is sort of where information goes to die within the police department. So I think, our struggle, and even in a city like Seattle, I mean, you would think, again, this is Seattle, the home of Microsoft and Amazon and so many others, that it would be a city that, in a police department, has sort of first-in-class technology. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, it is really like pulling teeth. When you start digging, we were already, I'll give the city credit, so it was already a leader in producing sort of some surface data that has been pushed out for many years on our open data portal, data.seattle.gov. But then when you start to dig down one layer below, you know, the stuff that you really need to inform the community, to provide context to more than just sort of what's on the surface, it is you need people who know what they're doing. One, to sort of these lightweight hacks to push it out first, and then two, we've had to redesign and implement new data systems so that it would make it easier for us, not just to use the data internally, but to push it out and let folks use it externally as well. And I mean, that's what has been key, that, you know, in Seattle, I mean, we have a decent sized IT department, but a lot of their job was, you know, keep the lights on to make sure that our mission critical systems like radios, our MDTs don't go down. They weren't thinking about data and how to push that data out. So the more we've engaged the local tech community, the more they brought in ideas of how we could push it out now. And then as we've designed a new data analytics platform, what that should really look like, so that in the future, we're not stuck in this situation again.
And Justin, I guess on the state level, kind of what were some of the challenges?
So I think there are two additional challenges that we've been experiencing. One is there's a lot of data that people might expect we have, and use of force as sort of a natural starting place, traffic stop, all the sorts of data that inform how we're doing. I think there's an assumption that we should have it, and then suddenly once we started looking closer, we realized we didn't have it. And so then we just passed a bill in California, for example, to start collecting use of force data that results in serious injury or death, and a traffic stop bill that will collect data on racial profiling. So I think there was this initial moment of shock that we just didn't really know much about whether these were isolated incidences or part of a much broader trend. And so that was challenge 1A. 1B is then actually collecting that data, which is also very difficult. And I think there's a belief, and you know, we know what data we want, let's flip the switch and suddenly collect it. And then this goes back to the system problems, which is these systems are not really well architected to share and collect and be extensible and adapt. So I think there's a huge data collection problem. The second then relates to the data we do have, which is great to start mining, but from a statewide perspective, one of our hopes is to start allowing locals to start comparing to similarly situated locals to understand who's doing well and where there could be areas of improvement. But because data hasn't been used in the same ways as it has now, we're finding standardization issues. Data quality isn't what we'd like it to be, not surprising. So really the question there is, how can we not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and mine for what we can with what we have, and then build towards a better data architecture in the future?
And
Yeah.
Denise, I know the talk always about standards and...
That's true. And, you know, I'm going to say it's a process, not a product, because it's about having these important conversations with stakeholders about starting to talk about the data and what they mean. Certainly one thing that I appreciate is the role that Code for America played with Indianapolis in helping to build a connector to liberate some of the high-value data that agencies have been having trouble getting out. And so it's that type of, you know, finding common challenges and then building strategic tech tools to liberate the data.
Yeah, and I would just say I think one important role that the Police Data Initiative has done, and Code for America and others over this past year, I mean, because you have seen the sort of a sea change that even as we release contracts now for different things, that I can't tell you how many we've set as we're going through putting together requests for proposal, have sent it back down saying, if it's not open, we're not And that's going to be a requirement from now on, because again, too many legacy systems that we have, we get locked into these vendors coming selling the latest, greatest thing, and then all of a sudden it takes, they're the only ones that can unlock the data. And so I'm not saying that's happening across the country, but the more we talk about it, through initiatives like the White House Police Data Initiative, and through the engagement that Code for America is involved with us as well, and the more we talk about that stuff, I mean, that's the important. That will help us change within policing. So the big companies can't come in and lock you into something that you can bring the smartest tech person in, but we're locked into that proprietary system.
I think that's a good way to segue into in terms of what would you tell other governments that are interested in starting to release data in general? What are certain things to keep in mind or approaches to take?
But the first thing is leadership. So forget all the tech and everything I just said too. If we didn't have the political leadership of the mayor and the police chief, we would not be able to do what we're doing. So if we could have the brightest minds working on this, at various levels, and we could be involved in initiatives at the state level and at the federal level. But if you don't have that commitment at the top, then that would really, they would have put a stop to this a long time ago. But I mean, they have the same belief, again, that the more transparent we are in how we do business, the more we can increase or enhance public trust.
To add on two other things, leadership would definitely be the first for mine as well. It started with the AG had a vision that we sat on a treasure trove of data, and data is a public good that we should use, not sit on. So that was key. I think the second is just finding a couple champions who will lead the project and sort of have a strong vision and knock down obstacles, because there will be many. And the third is the Sunlight Foundation. I believe Emily was probably my third call once we decided we were going to do this. They had basically thought through the playbook of everything it would take. And I called her and I said, we have these 3 issues. And she said, oh, I think that is 6, 7, and 9 on the principles of open data. And so I think the other key thing is don't recreate the wheel. There's a lot of people who've thought about all the problems that anyone would inevitably face, and luckily most of them are consolidated at the Sunlight Foundation.
And I just throw that praise back out to all of you and to a number of the people watching this panel, because our principles that we developed are the product of learning from the community that we've just had the opportunity to witness and collect. What we found is really helpful, particularly because they're always when something gets going, there must be champions, there must be vision, but then there are also people who are not as engaged or who have fear. Fear is a challenge that we see a lot when we're introducing open data as a concept to people who haven't interacted with it before. And I know that's present in law enforcement as much as anywhere else in government. Having enabling legislation is sometimes helpful, and not necessarily the first step, but can help along the way, particularly when that lays out some governance rules for data, which, especially for a program to become sustainable, are useful. A lot of times people are very concerned about data quality. Are we going to publish something that's going to accidentally, invite us to, reveal something that shouldn't be revealed? Are we going to be creating liabilities through hastily, publishing something that maybe wasn't quite ready? Part of the way that you avoid that is by having a structure in place to manage data publication, and having that written out in some form of policy we found to be a really helpful thing, especially for more complex data releases where you're talking about bringing things from a variety of departments or agencies. So that's not the alpha and omega, but it's a helpful piece that we've been able to see different places really run with.
And there are 2 things that I'm struck by listening to Emily, that going into this in Seattle a year and a half ago, the city had we paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars for withholding data and information. And Washington State, I get tired of saying it, because anywhere you go, everyone says they had the most liberal public disclosure laws. It does seem Washington State's probably at the top of the list. Washington State's at the top of the list. But we paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars for withholding information. We've never paid out any money, knock on wood, for releasing the wrong information. I mean, so that sort of helped us on a risk-based, thinking about, and with our legal team, thinking about pushing it out, that, you know, we never released information, been sued for giving out the wrong information. But what has concerned me over the past, really past 3, 4, 5 months is, you know, we were pushed, and this helps with the White House Police Data Initiative and Sunlight and others, we were pushed to, you know, release as much information as possible. Now the tide is turning back to make sure you've considered all the privacy implications. So, and which, I mean, we think we're very thoughtful about that and trying to balance transparency and privacy. But I've certainly seen a shift over the past few months as we push more and more data out. We're getting it from the other side saying you haven't considered all the privacy risks involved. And I can tell you, at some point, if you don't have the leadership at the top, you almost shut down again because it becomes overwhelming to think, how do you fight through those issues of transparency, privacy, and then the technological issues of just getting the data out, never mind the everyday stuff that we have to deal with, which is, you know, reducing crime and disorder.
I guess what are some of those balances that you've done?
Engaging folks in the transparency community and the privacy community, and it's certainly, you know, being very clear about how the data we're releasing. We have a clear set of business rules that everyone can see that this is what we're releasing, and also this is what we're not releasing. Engaging with various groups as we were working through our body cam policy. Well, actually, we're going back in after the pilot to make revisions to our body cam policy. We start engaging various communities within Seattle, such as the LGBTQ community. What are your concerns about how we release data? And hearing their concerns and hearing concerns from other special victims that you don't want to release certain information, then trying to figure out, is it a policy issue, is it a training issue, or is it, I mean, can it be resolved through policy, through training, or through technology?
Yeah, and what we've seen with some of our cities is that they use engagement. They very specifically might preview a data set with a trusted group of community stakeholders. We saw that very successfully happen in New Orleans, where they previewed 3 policing data sets with a group of young coders and their tech mentors, and got, you know, tremendous feedback that they could then go back and, you know, produce the metadata that was necessary and the documentation to really make the data as useful as possible for the community. And we have one of our cities right now is looking at releasing data on domestic violence. And so they'll be also doing a preview event with advocacy groups and coders to hack on the data, identify, you know, some of those privacy concerns by working through the data in a trusted space.
Has anyone seen any type of policy changes that have started to become implemented due to either around the releasing of the data or from the data at all?
Changes in policy?
Yeah.
Oh, we've changed a lot of our policies over the past year related to thinking through, again, the transparency and privacy issue. Certainly, I mean, again, we're not doing anything, well, except engage someone on Twitter and have a hackathon. Other than that, I mean, we do think through, before we push data out, the policy issues that are involved.
Okay. Yes, Emily, have there been any other type of policy changes or someone that's interested in starting what they should start to think about on the policy end from the beginning?
Well, we work frequently with both community actors and members of government who are interested in thinking about how to implement open data. And we do provide policy resources. We have our set of open data principles that we've done various revisions of as we've learned more and as the community has grown and developed better, even more best practices. And we've also been working on producing kind of a model, a draft executive order that a community can use as a kind of starting place for language if they're interested. We crowdsourced feedback on it and actually just released the improved version today. It's on the Sunlight Foundation blog, so you can take a look if you're interested in seeing, you know, one approach to thinking about how you develop a policy to open data.
And Denise, tell us how people can start to get involved further with the data initiative.
Sure. Well, the first thing is to talk with your leadership. What we look for in police data initiative cities is that you've got buy-in from the police chief, the CIO, or the local equivalent of the Chief Information Officer, and the mayor's office or city manager's office, because that's absolutely crucial. And we do like to see that our most successful cities have a strong partnership between the tech team and the police team. And then we ask that you identify 3 data sets about policing, not just crime, but data about police activity that you might be up for, you want to commit to releasing. And then you send us an email at, is it up here? Yeah, pdi@policefoundation.org. That goes to our partner organization, the Police Foundation. And you also identify a point of contact, somebody to participate in these weekly 30-minute stand-up phone calls where we talk about barriers and successes.
Thank you. I guess within that, we'll open it up for questions. There are 2 mics at the end of each one of the aisles, so if you have a question, please feel free to ask our panel. Yes, sir.
I have a question for the city. A lot of folks that are here are often liaisons, facilitators, different folks within the city, who's chiefs. What would be the advice for those of us who are active role opponents of open data in the city to engage a police department who has such a broad number of issues that they're on their mind? For example, looking at the community policing initiative, there are so many different initiatives and tasks that departments can look at. Open data is one of dozens of recommendations and task forces work. What would be your advice for us to bring up to a little closer to the top the open data part of the recommendations when we're speaking to chiefs?
I don't have an answer. I mean, I have an answer from the other side, because again, it takes leadership from the top and us pushing it down, that everyone, that we're going to engage. Engagement means beyond your traditional sort of community policing engagement. It means engaging with people who have technical expertise, and we do it all the time on social media. I mean, I can't tell you how many contacts we've developed through our official social media channels with the Seattle PD, and then those of us who also have our own social media accounts. But from the other side, I don't know, because if we didn't have that, again, if we didn't have the push from the top, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of things that we're doing.
I have 2 specific recommendations. One is to find alignment with open data and a priority initiative, because there's almost always some connection. And the second is to find a peer police chief who is opening data and have them initiate the conversation. And we're happy to help facilitate that. We have a great partnership with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, as well as the Police Foundation, and of course all of the chiefs who are participating in the Police Data Initiative.
That's an incredible answer. I'll add one additional component, which is, to the extent that you do have an engaged tech community, kind of seed the notion with them that they might want to ask for data from the police department, because once they're also facing public interest, then it might raise its profile a little bit. And certainly it's something that is of great public interest. And so, depending on your community, you may already know these people, or, others might be in contact with them. But it's been really exciting in a lot of communities, so use the power of the community to do that.
Oh, and one more thing. One of our successful cities that's really ramping up, they've doubled down on their open data initiative. They took the press releases and good news coming out of the New Orleans event, printed it out and showed it to their chief. And then that really catalyzed their open data releases. Yes.
What do you guys think about the role of narrative when the data is released, like an official narrative from the city or from the police department? And what are the things to consider when you roll out data?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. We've thought a lot about that in the California Attorney General's office, because there's both open data, which is we're making it open and available, but also what is the data saying? What are the data stories that we can learn from it? And part of what we want to do with Open Justice is make sure that the data is available to coders and hackers and academics and researchers. So that's part of our open data portal. But we also created a justice dashboard to basically make clear to anyone, the public, journalists, people who didn't want to deal with CSV files or stata or programs that are far beyond me. So they could just get a quick understanding. And so we spent a lot of time trying to tell an objective and minimal story to give it a high-level overview. You know, what can we take away from this? You know, what are the 5 insights that somebody should walk away? And I think that's a valuable role the government can play, and for 2 reasons. One is we have a bully pulpit, or sort of a platform where people will listen. And so there's a huge opportunity to sort of be objective and tell that. The other is, one of the things that we heard a lot from law enforcement was, if you're going to go out there and release the data, we're okay with it, but please provide some context so people get a full story. And so why we think offering some narrative is really powerful is it creates some, what we hope to be, objective view. We brought in academics to help vet the story that we were sharing and co-create it with him. But it helps provide a very thoughtful piece that puts context into, you know, the demographics of the population county where the data is coming from, so there's no intentional gotcha moments that makes law enforcement more hesitant to share their data. And so in making that commitment to tell a story, I think we were able to bring all stakeholders to the table in a way that everyone was more comfortable. So I think that will be a continual part of what we'll do in Open Justice 2.0 and later iterations.
Any other questions? With that, I definitely want to thank my panel today for coming out and giving us more information on the police data movement. So thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.